Have you ever read a thinker called Colin Wilson?
No.
I would definitely recommend him. He does some exposition of a guy called Gurdjieff. So Gurdjieff talked about this concept that the human being is a robot. He spends his whole life asleep. That's kind of what I was paraphrasing there a little bit. Ouspensky, one of his students, is a great progenitor of this conception, and he has a technique that he supposedly learned from Gurdjieff, although other students of Gurdjieff, question the validity of his interpretations, but I personally find him very illuminating. And his so the technique he learned from Gurdjieff he calls self-remembering, and he kind of describes it like, it's like imagine you're looking at a watch, and you can kind of look at the watch, or you can kind of look inward at yourself and observe yourself in this state. And then you can, if you try really hard, you can kind of look at the watch and look at yourself looking at the watch. He calls this self-remembering. And he kind of talks about how cultivating this state. And the thing I love about Colin Wilson's exposition of this is he does a great job of explaining why it makes sense to have the robot. And he kind of talks about how, when I'm first learning something, like it's very laborious. Like when I'm learning to type on a keyboard, I have to coordinate all of that manual movement. That movement manually, I have to think about every keystroke and all of that. And then over time, it becomes something that I can do automatically. Like I can just think of what I want to say, and that's an example of where something's being assimilated by a part of you that Colin Wilson calls the robot, And he kind of says this is really useful because obviously we want to free up our attention to do more important things. Like we don't want to have to think about every single keystroke, etc. But he kind of says, but there are some things that I don't want the robot to do for me, right? Like when I first hear a beautiful piece of music, like I really listen to it, but by the second time, it's like started to become mechanicalized. You know what I mean? And there's this pervasive tendency to kind of let the robot do everything, to live in a state of sleepwalking where everything you do is automatic and robotic, and you barely ever wake up and appreciate and taste life, have that sapience, that taste. And so Gurdjieff and Ouspensky and Colin Wilson to some degree, part of the pattern of that set of ideas is how to wake up, how to awaken this sleeping giant to be aware of itself, to realize, to self-remember, and to stay awake.